I'm your host, Mike Lutman, and I'm honored to have my good friend on the podcast. We were both trapped in a cycle of gaming that took a toll on our health, well-being, and growth. He's transformed himself through determination and a deep desire for change. I'm so grateful to have such a remarkable individual as a true friend.
Cool. Glad to be here.
So let's just kick it off right away. Can you share a little bit about your background and your experience with video games?
Yeah, I've basically had been playing games from a pretty young age. I remember, like, as a kid, I would sneak up the stairs in the middle of the night sometimes, or like when I was supposed to be sleeping, just to play a few different games like Starcraft, Brood War, and stuff like that. And once I had a little bit more freedom in university and towards the end of high school, it kind of got a little bit more out of control because I could just decide when I wanted to play a game versus have it be controlled by like my parents, for example. And yeah, it took a while for me to realize how it was affecting me. And eventually, thankfully, I was able to have that realization and kind of have a cognitive effort to stop and try to do better for myself because I was able to realize that, like, yeah, I'm having fun, but it's kind of like a temporary thing. It's not necessarily like something that I always want to be having fun and just doing nothing with my life. So yeah, I was able to kind of go towards that path of self betterment and recovery almost. And it sounds weird to say because like not too many people talk about video games that way. But yeah, now I don't really like play. I kind of prioritize and focus on different things, and yeah, was able to do well after that.
Nice. That's good to hear. When do you think gaming turned from like hobby to something that's negatively affecting your life?
Yeah, so like this is going to be an interesting one because I don't think it ever could have been a hobby for me. Even when I was a kid and playing, I could easily have been playing for a really long time without like someone stepping in and saying it's time to go to bed. It's time to turn this off. And so for me, it's like it was like a matter of when, and the when is like when I had that control to say, oh, I can decide to do this all the time. And yeah, there were certain things in my life, like when I was in university, that were still very important to me, like getting good grades and graduating and all that stuff. But even with that, like it was so easy for me to just spend any free time I had on games. And so the worst of it really was when I was in university. Because of that, like I neglected some of my other hobbies, like playing soccer and like being on the water or something like that. And instead, it was just like, oh, I have free time to hop on, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's the case for a lot of people. Did you ever neglect anything in your academic career in place of gaming?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it was less like I wasn't failing or anything, but it was so obvious that I could do better if I
Mm.
applied more of myself to certain like courses or anything like that. So it was like a different kind of neglect. It was like a functioning addict's kind of neglect. It was like how much can I get away with and still be okay with the impact, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I have this like memory of looking at like my hours on some of the games that I played a lot of and seeing like at least 8 hours a day, like not at 8 hours a day, but like a standard work week worth of
Mm-hmm.
hours per week. So like 40 plus on this game. And it's like, when I look at it like that, yeah, like maybe I had some time for other things, but this was literally like a full work week of work instead going towards a game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that could have been applied to anything. It could have been applied to my school, like part of it, right? Even if 1/4 of that, if 10 extra hours per week went to school, that would have had a huge impact. And then the other 30 hours could have been towards, being more active in terms of like my health, in terms of my social life, etc. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like some people will always make the argument that games can be good for your social life because you're on there with your friends and everything, but it's still like different. I don't know how you feel about that, but to me, it's like nothing can like replace going out, like hanging out, playing soccer or something with your friends outside, or in
Mm-hmm.
a place where you actually interact with people.
Yeah, I don't think many people are talking about this. I think people understand that like some people do this and they run into problems, but I don't think a lot of people understand that there are people that are putting this much time into it and they're still functioning and they're still achieving.
Mhm.
And I think that is a big disconnect in the view of video game addiction versus other addictions. So at the time when you were spending that much time in games
Mhm.
and still achieving, still functioning, neglecting like some things, but pretty much overall, like society would say you're doing like pretty well. Thinking about the hours that you put in the game, like how would you feel about that at that time?
Yeah, at the time, honestly, I didn't think it was a big deal because I was enjoying what I was doing, right? And it was like there were certain itches that the gaming addiction was scratching in terms of like the
Mm-hmm.
competitive itch. Like I was decent enough at the game that I was like, oh, I just need to put more time and I can do better and I can get close to making like more money off of it or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like I felt like I had that drive to do better in that game, and that was kind of helping propel the addiction. And then on top of that, of course, like talking with like people that I like and everything, and like hang out with online specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's like I would say that in terms of the addiction at the time, it was really hard to realize, and it only took like feeling like I was going down a downward spiral for me to realize like, okay, I need to take like a big step back and stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely could relate to that too. It's like when you're putting that much time in, you realize that other things are it's at a cost of other things, you know,
Mhm,
hobbies, pursuits
mhm.
of other things, but it takes priority over
Yeah,
those.
yeah, you
Um
downplay it,
if
right?
yeah, if possible. Yeah, at the time it's really hard to see unless it's exactly what you said, like you take a step back. But now looking at it from like present, how does that make you feel like thinking about yourself at that time?
Yeah, it's to me now it's obvious. If someone were to say, "Oh, just cut back a little bit on games," that would have been impossible for me because of the itch, right? The drive, wanting to
Yeah.
play.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not as simple as saying, "Oh, only play 1 hour instead of the time you're playing," because that just would not fix it. I think that yeah, it's like it's clear to me that it was like certain parts of it you can argue weren't harmful and were good, but that's just not looking at the giant elephant in the room, which is everything else that's bad that was associated with it. I could have
Mm-hmm.
gotten just as many benefits not gaming and just hanging out with these people and socializing with the same people in a different setting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like a lot of the arguments for like, oh, it helps with like your strategic mind or like it helps with like your socializing. It's like you're looking at two very very small use cases of like or benefit cases but ignoring everything else that can be harmful that comes out of it. And instead of just saying, oh, what if I spend, 1/20th of the time and just start like learning something that's great for me, like from a strategic point of view that doesn't involve, becoming addicted.
Yeah, yeah. Hearing that, the cost benefit analysis is like wild. It's
Yeah.
not it does it's not in reality. Right now, if you could tell your like if you could send a message back to yourself that was like at that time where you were spending that much time,
Mhm.
help you realize either you're addicted or like you actually don't want to do it.
Okay. I would say like there were obviously, even at the height of my addiction, things that I loved that I just spent less time on. Soccer, dance, like windsurfing, etc. Like active things that I liked as hobbies. And
Yeah, that's
what I
cool.
would what I would try to tell myself is like if I put way less amount of time and gaming into those things, I could have like real tangible results and things that I'm super proud of and like that are healthy for me. Right? Like if I love languages or I love traveling to certain parts of the world, I could have like spent 5 hours a week, right, instead of the 40 that I was doing gaming and put some time into something that after 6 months there would be an obvious result that I could be proud of. I
Hmm.
don't think that there was like there wouldn't be anywhere near close enough the amount of pride that I would get from the game side of things, um,
Hmm.
compared to like, wow, I could have been like, you know, in amazing shape, like running a marathon or something. Like it sounds crazy, but like,
Yeah,
some people spend,
yeah.
6 months to a year prepping for a half marathon, right? And they practice maybe like a few times a week for maybe like an hour, right?
Hmm.
That's what 3 or 4 hours a week compared to the 40 that I was doing in other things. And so it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, I would just try to tell myself there are real results for things that I actually like and that benefit me. That if I spent the time away from the games and did other things, I could feel like a superhuman, you know?
Yeah, right. I mean, funny enough, for me, I feel like now in my 30s that the world is my oyster compared to like in my 20s. I feel like in my 20s, I didn't feel
Mhm.
like everything was possible or anything is possible or I could do anything. That's a very good point in the like, if I, so like bring it to me, if I could tell myself something back like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it would be something supportive to like try and help me realize that, the world is your oyster. All you got to do
Yeah.
is, put like, fight the monsters really.
Yeah.
Um, do you think that you would receive that like well?
Um, I think that it would be tricky. To be completely honest, it would still be really tricky because I feel like a small part of our brains, even at the height of addiction, knew that that was possible and maybe just didn't want to do that
Hmm.
because it's effort, right? And so like the
Yeah.
hardest part is to convince that like the effort is worth it, and all it takes for certain goals, like if you set like actual realizable goals that are shorter term, it's like getting myself at the time to believe that a little bit of time for a few months would result in something that's like I'm proud of. That would be the hardest thing, and once I did
Hmm.
that, I think it would be way easier, right?
Yeah, it's that like domino effect. It's like
Yeah,
once you get that proud moment once,
yeah,
like for that thing after gaming for like this long, because that is the thing. It's like you get entrenched in gaming for long periods of time.
yeah.
Time becomes like weeks, months, years, and then like you don't get that like that outside like hobby skill win. And
Mhm.
then it feels like something that you forget. And then once you get that again, it really starts the whole like domino effect of okay, maybe I can get a second one, and it's like, oh, this is like really, really achievable now.
Mhm.
And then that's the way it was for me, at least.
Yeah. I still think that it needs that, but it also needs the combination of realizing that gaming can be harmful because
Mm,
they're like, just like there were functioning addicts like myself with like work and games, I'm sure there are also functioning addicts with like certain hobbies and games, right? And so like
hmm.
you kind of need to also look back and realize like, hey, this is still a time sink and an effort sink, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
So when did you start beginning to be like, I need to cut back?
Um, like certain things that I like certain things got hit basically.
Okay.
Um like um I guess like my health, for example, like my weight and everything. I was like the most overweight I had ever been. I was not exercising, right? And so it's like stuff like that. Or even something like yeah, I just like if someone asked me like what have you done for the last few months after work, right? I didn't have anything great to say.
Hmm.
Um so it's like that type of realization helped me kind of shift my focus a little bit. And even with that, it was still pretty hard. Yeah.
Okay. And so that sounds like it hasn't been like 10 years in the making. So like how many years do you think from that point to like actually quitting like that time frame
Oh,
was?
as soon as I had that, so like maybe I'm a bit different. As soon as I had that realization, which was like after graduating, like a few years after, that's like when I realized. And like it came in waves as well. Like there were certain times where I knew that I was fine without a certain game, like especially the one that I was addicted to the most. But then like I would rebound with a different game. And so like for me to truly realize that like this is all affecting me, it took like a few years after that.
Okay. So like time wise in years, like how many?
Close to 10 probably, maybe like 8 years
Okay.
from like graduating high school and starting university and being addicted and into like having a full-time job and realizing I need to get rid of the addiction.
I didn't know that. I think we've like chatted about this pretty openly pretty frequently. And funny enough, starting this like podcast and like going into that addiction and seeing like, oh yeah, like what is my story? I thought that my journey taking like 10 plus years of like when I was like, I need to start like quitting, being that long, I thought that was like very unique.
No, I
And
don't even think so.
yeah, well, I mean, I think it's unique in the sense that like that actual amount of time, maybe not unique, but unique in the sense that like not many people talk about that long journey. A lot of the things that I hear are people that are like, I thought about it, I hit this point, I made the decision immediately, and then I quit. I like cold turkey or something like that. And it's like, oh, maybe I went back like in a month, but then I quit like immediately after. And I didn't hear people say like, I've been relapsing, I've been struggling with it for like years and years and years and years. And like, I would never have thought like, or like at the time, at least when I was struggling, that it would be like, oh yeah, like it could be like 10 years before I actually see it, but it'll be worth it type of deal.
So maybe, okay, wait, maybe I misunderstood you. Like how long have I been trying to quit and relapsing for? For me, was that your question? If that's the case, I
Yeah.
would say like, okay, not 8 years, then maybe like, maybe like 2 or 3 years, I would say, which is still a pretty long time. I was going 8 years from like the start of my addiction to the end kind of thing.
Okay. No, I meant from like the point where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Oh, okay. Honestly, it's probably like 3 or 4 years still.
Okay. Yeah. But so that's like something that I was like, okay, this is probably, I mean, it's still way longer than I feel like anyone else is talking about or willing to admit.
Yeah.
But I think this is like at least like 1 to like 5 years, I feel like is probably like fairly common. But
it can be longer for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, right. I mean, it depends.
Yep.
Okay, so you said it took you 2 to 3 years to quit. Can you kind of run me through that like 2 to 3 year period where you're like trying to quit? Like, what are you doing? Like, how are you relapsing, and what are you doing to like deal with it, and eventually how you actually came out of it?
So for me, it's like I had a specific game that I was really addicted to, and quitting that one, maybe it took like a few months or so. Like it didn't actually take that long. And the hardest part for me was at the time, my thought process was that game specifically was what was causing me harm in a way. And it was obviously in hindsight, it's like, okay, no, it wasn't, right? But at the time, it's like, okay, like I'm spending too much time on this game, but it wasn't thinking like on gaming in general. It was just thinking on that game. And so my relapse was really more of like, oh, this is another fun game. Like, let's check this out. And then kind of going down that path. And then after that, maybe once I realized, oh, maybe like I need to get away from the PC gaming, then obviously there's like a whole new beast in mobile gaming, right? And so it's like, even though the medium is switching, I needed to realize that it was the actual like game side itself. And that took a while because it's like there's always something like so easily at your fingertips that you can like pick up and look at and instantly get addicted to, right? And so it's like, yeah, so the relapsing and the swings were more like, oh, this is something that is like I can easily just look at for a little bit and put down, but not realizing that it affected me so much more.
Right. Okay. I want to ask you a little bit about your decision making on like relapsing. Was it more of a I'm quitting now and I don't want to play, but I want to play so bad that I can't stop myself? Or was it a decision of, okay, I quit, but like it's not that bad, I can control it this time, and then you go back?
It was more the latter. It was like, oh, I quit, but I can manage this. I don't think it's going to be too bad. I can put it down. Oh, wait, there's an event in this game that happens at a specific time, so I should be on at that time. And then, oh, I want to be not competitive in the game, but like I want to feel good about like my character or whatever. So I want to put more effort into it, right? So it's like It's like a slippery slope. Like it starts with like one step, and then it obviously like keeps going down and down.
Yeah. Yeah, it is very funny how your mind can convince you that you can control it this time. This time is different, right?
Yeah.
When you have like overwhelming data that, it probably won't be.
And like the really important thing to realize too is like all of these games have like millions of dollars in research into finding out like how to get someone to dip their toe in, and that's what they're
Right.
looking for in terms of like the psychology behind the game, like the way things are designed. It's to get you to spend money or time.
Yeah, right. They literally piggyback off the same thing that like actual gambling does.
Yeah.
They're like we'll entice them with something that like is so fun. Like they
Yeah.
can't say no to dip their toe into this game.
Yeah.
We're promising these big things. But it is funny to realize that like some people can just do the like balance that, decently well,
Mhm.
whereas like others can't. And it's hard to like find a reason for that a lot of the time for me.
Yeah. I think that I mean, there's definitely some correlations, and I totally agree. It's like there hasn't been enough research in finding like the type of mindset that really gets hit hard by this stuff. I think
Hmm.
a lot of people that I've seen, and it's like the same type of person that goes into like competitive gaming. It's like the
Hmm.
people who are competitive at sports, who always wanted to like be the best kind of thing, and worked hard at it, and then this is just another medium to like be an outlet for their competitive desire, right? And
Hmm.
it's like,
Yeah.
but it's predatory, right? In terms of like the types of games there are and like what they're like the game is trying to accomplish to these types of people, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think that's definitely a draw. For many, many, many people, it gives you that like rush of, oh, I'm like doing something competitive, and also sports are usually supported with like tons of things where it's like beneficial for health, social
mhm,
skills, like all that stuff, and you're getting the same stuff but like from a game, and then
mhm,
it becomes the games become like too novel, and then sports, it's like hard to really compete with that.
mhm,
Another thing where you're like, oh yeah, like I hit like my heaviest at a point, and then like I didn't feel good about that.
mhm,
And I've been like writing like my story too, and that's also another point where I was like, oh, I had broken glasses, and then I finally got a new prescription. I could really like see myself like in the mirror, and I was like, oh man, like I don't know what happened and how I got here, but
yeah, but it
it's just like
sucks.
yeah, it's just like my
Yeah.
stomach sank, and the whole deal of like, how did I do this to myself type deal. And I think that's like very common. I've been reading a lot of other people's stories, and weight usually plays like it's a very common factor, and it's one that isn't just like a little bit. It always is it to a point where people are like, but like how did I get here?
Yeah.
Like some more than others, but the
Yeah.
mindset is, it seems like it's very common. It's all the same. And I feel like it's like our story. It's not my story. It's not your story. It's like our
Yeah.
story, because there's
It's a
so
big
many of
common
us
ground.
that do into this. What do you think are some common misconceptions that people have, like non gamers have, about video games and like the addiction?
um it's a hard question. I think the a big misconception is that it's like controllable. I think people think like, oh, like I'm not addicted to games, so why don't you just like stop, right? It's
Hmm.
I liken it in a way to telling an alcoholic just stop drinking, or because like it is really similar. Like there, you can't just stop in some cases, right? Like you have to want to stop, and there has to be a reason for you to stop. Um, and so making sure people realize that like, okay, your brain is changing when you're playing these types of games in a way that like wants the dopamine and wants like the feel good feeling that's associated with playing these games. And so
Hmm.
treating it more seriously is something that would be more beneficial. Now, it's really tricky because, like, at the same time, like, if I was at the heart of my addiction and someone was just like trying to stage an intervention and telling me to stop, I don't know how I would react to it necessarily. But just like realizing that it's a serious thing, I think matters a lot from like people who are not addicted. Just to
Hmm.
give like a quick like example, I was in Peru traveling, and Peru is a country that there's a lot of people that play a certain video game, and it was crazy to me walking down the streets during weekdays because they would have police walk to each of the internet cafes and take out the kids who are skipping school to play this game, because they don't have an internet connection at home all the time or something, but they would be willingly and so badly addicted and so in a belief that they can make it out by playing this game, like make it in life in a way, that
Mm-hmm.
they're sacrificing their education and sacrificing like the rest of their life on this glimpse of hope that is engineered by the game, right? To get them to spend money or time. And it was like really heartbreaking to see that like every day this police officer goes to these internet cafes, pulls the kids out of the cafes and brings them to school. And it's like that's the kind of gravity that people are dealing with. And instead of it being like adults who are addicted to gambling and addicted to alcohol and drugs, it's smaller children, like it's youth, right?
Yeah. And how long ago was this?
Maybe 3 years ago.
Oh yeah, so like pretty common.
Yeah.
And that was pretty recent. These internet cafes, like how many seats do they have
Like a
for
big internet
stations?
cafe, like I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe but the thing is, they're everywhere, right?
Yeah, right.
Because at least in Peru, for example, they're subsidized by the government in a lot of cases, I believe.
Mm,
So it's a lot cheaper. Um,
right.
but
So
it's heartbreaking.
people don't have like personal computers in their
Not
homes, I
always.
assume.
Not
That's why
always.
it's like subsidized, I assume.
Yeah, I believe so. That's
Okay,
something
it's
that
not
we
like
may have to check.
subsidized. Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
just like
But
give strong info.
yeah, but I doubt they're subsidizing computer cafes like for the purpose of gaming, right? Like
Correct.
it's
It's for
probably
internet
for
use.
yeah, right. Yeah, it's probably for like more availability.
Yeah.
But now the question I guess is more of yeah, does it end up just turning into a gaming cafe because like that's the best use case of that business because like that's where the demand is
Mhm.
and that's where they get the people who spend the longest and you know they're the most profitable on.
Yeah.
And you said that they're everywhere. Is it like
Yeah.
comparable to like Korea type thing where it's like every corner has
No,
one?
because of how dense Korea, like some of the cities in Korea are, right?
Mm,
Like
yeah.
in terms of
I'm just
density.
trying to get a picture of it. I'm
But
not
like you
like
can walk like a few streets and see like a picture of Dota or League of Legends,
mm,
like the icons, right? Like the
right.
symbols.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Okay.
like you would be able to see them anywhere. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, but it's sad. It's like
Yeah.
these are kids that don't realize what's happening to them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned chasing a way out. I think that's a very interesting point because usually when you're thinking of addiction, um, it's usually not in the pursuit of like a better life, in my opinion. It'd be like people go to these addictions for like coping for some type of, you know, personal issue, external issue, you know,
Hmm.
something like that they can't solve instead of running to it for a solution to solve an external problem. So that was a very interesting point, especially since both of us had some experience in not really like chasing it, but you know, we had like a lot of competitive fun, and
Hmm.
I think we met a lot of people that were trying to be competitive
Hmm.
and did dump in like that time as well and didn't make it and seeing the repercussions of that. So it kind of hits home on that as well. But
Yeah.
what you're talking about is like this en masse, like on like a scale of a country. So
Yeah.
that's very shocking.
I think that for a lot of them, it's a combination of what you mentioned too. It's like, yeah, they might be escaping something like a difficult life or something like that, or maybe like a parent that's also struggling with a different type of addiction. But
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, they look at these tournaments that are coming in for these games and the prize pools, and it's like overwhelming amounts of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they look at that as a dream in some cases, and in reality, I mean, it sounds like a horrible thing to say, but in reality, like one person out of the millions of people who are trying for this will win, and everyone
Mm-hmm.
else is really losing, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just losing the game; it's losing the amount of hours they put into it, the sacrifice of their youth or whatever, right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
And it's pretty horrible, and it's like, yeah, it's not good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'd like to actually see or look up some of the comparable outcomes to kids chasing the dream of like pro gaming and winning money in that way compared to like making it in the NFL or like, you know, the NBA or stuff like that.
Mhm.
To see like if people are the same, like have the same obsession but with like a sport, is it as detrimental to them, and is it as hard to actually find a different purpose? I would assume yes, but like to
Mm,
actually see empirical data on that.
I would play devil's advocate, and I would say probably it's much less detrimental. The reason being, anyone at any age can make it in video games. If you're a
Wait,
kid,
which one being less detrimental?
a sport.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The reason being, like, when playing video games, it's so hard to know when to stop being trying to be competitive. If you feel like you're so close to that cusp, you can go for a decade easily, right? And like we've seen people do it, and like we've come close to that in a way. Whereas with a sport, there's like a cutoff age. You know you're not good enough when you're not in, like, I don't know, like college sports, right? Like you're getting cut or
Hmm.
whatever. And then after that, it's like that's the wake up call, and it's like one that's imposed on you. Whereas in video games, it's never really imposed by something, right? Only like a couple hundred people, if that, are in the top teams. And if you're not, and you think you're close, you're always going to be chasing that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Funny enough is like you're like, oh, I'm playing devil's advocate, but I'm like 100% agreeing with
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
I think gaming was like way
Okay,
worse,
okay, okay.
and I think that's a great point to put it on too. But
Yeah,
more of like I'd like to see like concrete
yeah,
like evidence of it, like in a
yeah,
study or in some empirical sense,
yeah,
where the outcomes are like what I would assume devastating in
yeah,
comparison, like not even in the same tier.
yeah. You know,
Um,
there's one thing I think can help, that I'd like to bring up,
yeah,
which I've
absolutely.
always thought about, which is like gamifying certain things that can be like really beneficial. So
Hmm.
there were certain things that really scratched my competitive itch in a way when I was in high school that helped a lot. And I would say stuff like, and it's gonna sound like the nerdiest fucking thing, but stuff like math contests or programming competitions or stuff like that,
Hmm.
where it's like you're competing against people, but you're doing it in a way that it's like, this is helping me. I can be social with like my friends who are on a team for a programming competition or whatever, and I'm like really learning stuff and like applying myself to it. Or even like gamifying certain things at work, where it's like if you work in cybersecurity, for example, there's stuff called like penetration tests, right? Where it's like someone tries to break into a network and documents everything, and it's like kind of like a cat and mouse game where, like, you know, one group is trying to break into a network, the other group is trying to catch these people breaking into the network, documenting everything, and it's like a game of sorts, but it's a game where you learn so much about, like, you know, everything, like how people are doing stuff on the internet, how the internet works, and it's kind of like a side effect of gamifying certain things. And I think if that type of application happened more, in like some of the teaching methods or extracurricular stuff, I think it would be really beneficial. I think like
Hmm.
I wouldn't have gravitated as much to the games because I could have applied like myself in different ways, right? And there's nothing like seeing the results of your efforts when you apply them, and it's something that is good, right?
Right. Yeah, I agree. Especially if gaming has already taken like hold of the brain's expectations of reward.
Hmm.
It's like, okay, so I get a blast of happiness or accomplishment or, you know, whatever dopamine or brain chemicals will give you every, you know, X minutes while I'm playing this game.
Hmm.
And the thing is, if that's already taken hold and you're trying to either stop that or replace it with something that's not sufficient in satiating that same mechanism, then how can you expect someone to actually do it?
Yeah.
You know, people can say, oh, just be disciplined, just push through it, but like what are they saying really? They're saying you need to torture yourself because this is what your brain expects, and if you're not
Yeah.
giving it to your brain, then that is a form of pain.
Yeah.
So finding something that you can replace it with, gamifying something else where it's like, yeah, okay, maybe it won't be the same amount and it will be lesser, but it's the same mechanism and it does replace it.
Hmm.
So I think
Yep.
that's like a fantastic point.
Yeah. And there's some like really easy things that you can even get started with in terms of gamification. Like obviously I made some examples that are hard if you're not like in high school or whatever, but even stuff like running, like taking up running, right? Like most people, I can't say anyone, but a lot of people can do that, right? And so it's like start easy, like because
Mm-hmm.
obviously everyone has to start somewhere. Just like walk a few kilometers, then
Mm-hmm.
see if you can beat that time by like a minute or whatever, right? And just like slowly build it up. And it's like seeing the results and the accomplishment and the feel good feeling that you get after like a good run or whatever, or swim or bike or walk or anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like finding what makes you happy in that sense and like what you can push to the next level, right? That's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like a big thing that helps.
Yeah, I agree. On that point, so on your journey to quitting,
Yeah.
what were the types of things that you initially sought out to replace it? And did it did they all come at once? Like did you fall into routines like that were like, oh, I'm doing, this and this, or were they kind of like stair stepping where it's like, oh, I added one and then that was good and then two, like or was it all at once?
um I'll give what I did, and I'll give what I think people should do,
Okay,
because
yeah,
they are
sure.
not the same. I was pretty like hard on like I am falling down this hole, and it's because of my weight. It's because of my health. So I went like all in on trying to do better for myself for that in terms of like
Mm-hmm.
more activity and being very strict on my diet. And I don't think that has to be the case for everybody. It helped me because I needed that kind of kick in the ass to get going. But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, it can be like so easy to yo-yo back once you accomplish what you were trying to do there. And so treating it more like a marathon and having baby steps and like introducing certain things that you'll maybe they feel good, maybe they can be replaced by something else, like wait a week and see how you feel kind of thing. I feel like that's
Mm-hmm.
better because it establishes like a more permanent routine on what you like. And it's in a way that like if it sucks, you can stop and you won't feel horrible for stopping, because like if you try to change too much at once and it all of a sudden feels like shit, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, for me personally, I think I went really hard from the weight side of things. I just went way into keto, and it worked really well for me. But obviously, I stopped. Right now, I don't do keto, and so it wasn't like a forever me beneficial type thing. It was more like I need to change. I'm going to do what I think makes sense, and then
Mm-hmm.
see what happens at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it helped at the time.
Okay. So it sounds like you you chose difficult things to pursue then.
Hmm.
Like you wanted to see results quickly, but you knew they were difficult and you kind of just like headstrong like through that.
Yeah.
So exactly what I was saying, what do people expect us to do? You're like, I'll do it. um, in your leisure time when you were trying to quit,
Hmm.
what did you try and focus on? Like what type of content were you focused on like intaking,
Hmm.
and was any of that gaming? Did you have any tolerance
At the
for
time,
gaming
no.
in that?
No,
Okay.
at the time, no. I think that it would have just made me become addicted to the gaming content personally.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I'm not playing it and whatever, it's like it's too easy to just come home and look at all these like gaming YouTube videos all day long, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's one of the hardest things when dealing with coming from addiction is like, what do I do when I'm not doing anything? When it's like 8:30 p.m., I don't want to go outside because it's late and it's nighttime. I already ate, and now I have nothing to do until it's time for bed. And so, like, trying to think about that type of stuff. Um, if I could go back and do it, because like at the time I don't even know what I did, to be honest. Maybe I like went for a walk or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But like writing down certain goals that I would want to accomplish in like a few months, and then either trying to do certain things for those goals that I actually want, not things that it's like, oh, like, yeah, I want to speak a language fluently. It's like, no, I have to really want to. Like, there has to be a
Mm-hmm.
reason for it. Maybe I want to travel to that country, maybe even see myself living in that country in like 10 years, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, the want has to be there. Or like, for me, something that I wish I did more was like read more books. Um, books are
Mm-hmm.
like such a vanishing like hobby, like reading. I don't know. It feels like everybody just watches videos and scrolls news nowadays. But there are some like amazing authors and some really cool books. Even like some terrible books online, but are like hundreds of chapters that are just like a guilty pleasure addiction kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like finding that stuff and like finding a way to make to fill that leisure time, I think, and not
Okay.
think about the games. And like even now, like I have a book that I'm really enjoying that I'm just reading to like help fall asleep, but it's also kind of nice, right? Because it's like I enjoy the
Mm-hmm.
plot or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's bang on the same thing that like helped me fill a lot of the voids. But I'm curious about your experience with times like that where it is
Hmm.
like 8:30,
Hmm.
you got a little bit of time left, or like, it's like Sunday and it's raining out and there's like
Yeah,
not much to do, it's a cold and
yeah,
things got canceled, plans fell through,
yeah,
and you don't have anything planned
yeah.
and you don't have much direction, and you start thinking about gaming.
Hmm.
How do you manage filling that unallocated time with something that you just said,
Yeah.
or rather than just like thinking, I want a game, I want a game, I want a game?
I think that one thing that helped me a lot was having close friends that lived pretty close and were down to do whatever. So, like going
Mm,
for a walk with a friend and just chatting about things, I could do that really easily. And I've always had a friend that's been relatively close. But that's not to say like driving somewhere 10 minutes, who cares? Just do it, right? Like meet a friend, drive there.
mhm,
It's 8:30, but it's not 10:30. It's not 11:30, right? You can spend an hour talking to someone and just like chilling and getting
mhm.
over that and getting like making yourself distracted. We come up with like all sorts of excuses, like it's late, it's raining, whatever. Who it's water, okay? Right? It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's 2 hours before bedtime. You have 2 hours to do whatever you want, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And thinking about it that way kind of changes your approach in a way where it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, like when we were at the heart of our gaming addiction, it didn't stop us from going to for food at like 3 a.m. Right?
Yeah,
So why is
right.
it stopping us when we're out of the addiction and we have so much more free time? Let's still go out
Mhm.
for food and chat and find a new cafe or whatever.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
I think that's like that mindset needs to change for people.
Okay. So there needs
So
to be a process to like get yourself out of the cycle of
I don't want to do this.
the loop. Yeah, right. The
Yeah,
loop of thought of like, I'd
yeah,
rather be gaming and I don't
yeah,
want to
yeah,
do
yeah,
whatever else like I
yeah,
kind of do want to
yeah,
do.
yeah.
Right.
Some days you don't want to just be reading a book at 8:30 every single day. So just
Mhm.
find something that you want to do and do it. Right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, there were times like that where it was just so hard to break the loop of
Hmm.
I want a game, I don't want to do anything else. I want a game, I don't want to do anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think for me, breaking that loop was actually very, very hard, and I
Mhm.
didn't do it a lot in the beginning.
Mhm.
So
Me
trying to
neither.
think, yeah, but that was like the hardest part too.
Yeah,
So like
yeah,
thinking about being like, I should take the dogs to the dog park, but like then I got to get in the car and then I got
yeah,
to like drive through this thing. And like,
yeah,
what if I, step in
yeah,
dog shit
yeah,
type of deal?
yeah,
I would think of any other excuse that I could to get out of it. But
yeah.
yeah, I do think mine is similar to yours. It's like if I had like someone to do it with, or like someone that was like pushing me to do it, it like became a lot easier. And it's
Mhm.
like as soon as you begin, you already start to feel better.
Yeah, yeah. That's
It's
like the
just
hardest
being
part,
in that
right?
loop. Yeah. Yeah. Did you want to like add anything about your story or anything about gaming in general?
No, maybe just like just because you are functioning still and you haven't hit rock bottom doesn't mean you're not addicted. I think that some people are like, oh, I'm fine, I'm doing fine at work or whatever, but they stagnate because of the addiction, because of their time consumption. It's like I still look and it's like, oh man, I could have like, asked my work to pay for a course and maybe they would have done it. And maybe I would have been able to pick up a whole new skill and find a whole new interest. Right. But I didn't because I never asked, because I didn't want to, because I just wanted to play games all the time. So,
Right. Yeah.
just because you think you're doing fine doesn't mean that like you can't do better. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Coming on the other side, when you've quit video games and like your life is great, you have good habits.
Mhm.
Um, is there anything now that you think you can't or shouldn't do because of like your gaming addiction, like other than gaming, obviously?
No, but it took me a while to be at that point where it's like I feel like I'm okay, and I won't go back, because I kind of like have opened my mind to some of the awesome things that aren't gaming but are still amazing and super cool and things I want to learn and do. So I
Mm-hmm.
kind of just like, maybe if someone wants to play a game, I'll probably decline because like it's not even that fun to me anymore. I wouldn't want to have to like learn shit and deal with toxic people and all that stuff. I'd
Mm-hmm.
rather kind of focus on the stuff that I find really cool now, right? Or like spend time with like my partner or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like things that I love doing that I'm happy to put effort into because like it makes me feel good and it makes like everything good, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So did you meet your partner while you were gaming?
No,
No, you didn't.
no.
Okay. And was it far like after
Yeah.
you quit gaming?
Yep.
Okay. And do you think that you would have had a chance in the state that you were gaming?
Absolutely not. 0%. I think that I really strive to like better myself and feel better and feel more confident and all these things. And that led to like finding someone who like was interested in me as well, kind of thing.
Cool.
Yeah, without that, I would have been way too interested in the games, and it would not have like lasted, even if there was someone interested at the time. And like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I had dated people in my addiction at the time, right? And it's like they didn't last, and a lot of that is my fault, right? Because of the addiction, because it was like I could have been doing so much more for them, prioritizing them more.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
fully acknowledge that, and it definitely was not the best. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for sharing that. Okay. Cool. Yeah. I mean,
I think there's a lot of
I'm
good
like,
stuff there.
yeah, I'm super happy with this. I think this is like really cool. And funny enough, I was like, the whole like story thing and like how long it took you to quit and all that stuff was, well, like, surprising. Honestly, I thought for you, I thought it was like, oh, you just like decided and then it was like it. Like,
I
I
did,
don't,
and it was
yeah.
like I did really like, I felt good, but there was there's so many potential relapses, or there were relapses, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just that you like, maybe like at the time you saw me when I had done keto for a few months, and so I was like a totally different person, kind of thing. But then even after that, like a year after that, yeah, there was relapses, right?
Yeah. And I think the whole like reading a book or like or listening to like audiobooks now,
Yeah,
I think
dude, I
there's,
love those.
yeah, right. But the thing is, like, when I was gaming, I
Yeah.
couldn't, like, it couldn't hold my attention for like half a second
Hmm.
because I was like, this is not entertaining at all. Like, my
Yeah.
entertainment, like, spikes like everything
Yeah,
in me.
yeah,
And I'm
you're
like
like on
really into it.
overdrive.
Right, exactly. I'm like either like fight or flight almost because I'm
Yeah,
like, yeah, I'm fighting, I'm doing something adrenaline pumping. But
yeah,
then at that same time, if it brings you up that high, you don't get that like calming and your actual like critical thought and like being able to like be in touch with, yeah, not only how I think, but how I feel about this, like in touch with my emotions.
yeah,
And listening to books now has been like the just the bread and the butter about like where I want to start like shooting the direction of my next pursuit or
yeah,
like in my life to like better myself. And
yeah,
as I listen to like more and more of like other people's stories, other
yeah.
people's strategies, like the best-selling books that everyone is raving about, I'm like,
Hmm.
"Oh, I get it now. I get
Yeah,
it why people like go outside and they listen to these and they like batch
yeah,
these really good things for you and
yeah,
then your brain almost like automatically resets to a like a good state if you
yeah,
like keep this up and then almost automatically you'll start moving in the direction of the things that you're listening to, because
Yeah.
like they become exciting.
Yeah, exactly. There are unimaginably large amounts of books for everything, for
Hmm.
every skill level, for wanting to do something. If you want to do something and have no idea, I want to become a carpenter, I want to do woodworking, I want to build
Hmm.
that really cool drawer that you have behind you. There are books that would help you from a beginner to like being able to pull that off, right? And
Hmm.
that's really cool. And that is such
Yeah.
an untapped like knowledge source from our generation and younger. Yeah.
Yeah. With how like tempting technology has become, and how it can really do harm to you. On the flip side, we do live in like the best time if you do want to learn and
Yeah.
like gain skill. So
Yeah.
if you can flip that that direction and pursuit into a one that is of pure excitement, because like at a point games don't like, they're not exciting. Like they still give you
Mhm.
the internal feeling of excitement, but like you're not actually excited about something. Like it's not really that novel. It's the same. Okay, I'm on a computer, I'm sitting here, it's a game. It
Yeah.
falls within the same like criteria of other games, right?
Yeah.
It's just like with a different skin on it.
Yeah.
But then when you start actually like pursuing things outside of that, you get that novel effect, that real novel. Like I actually don't know what I'm doing,
Yeah.
and I can get a result where, I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
All right, thanks a lot. I really appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. No
I
worries. That was
think
fun.
I actually love talking with you. Yeah, I wish you the best.
Cool. Thanks.
All right.
Yeah, that was fun. All right. Talk to you later.
All right. See you later, man.